I'm here with Ed from Mythos.
Ragnarok.
You're here in Melbourne for the Melbourne Fringe Festival. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, this is our first international tour. So we're based in the UK, but we've flown over here to do Melbourne Fringe. It's our first time in Melbourne, and it's our first time performing anywhere outside the UK. So it's exciting to be here.
And you started last night. How was it?
That was amazing.
Yeah.
It's like any Fringe festival, you kind of don't know what it's going to be like till you just go out and do it.
Yeah.
There's only so much time you can prepare it, you can't rehearse it, you just have to put it together. We're a large cast, there's lots of us, so trying to fit that many people into just like a shipping container to try and do costume changes and things is a challenge, but that's what's so exciting about Fringe festivals.
Yeah. And it's just such an interesting concept. How did you come up with it?
I've been a wrestler for pretty much my whole life, and when I got into doing more...
You look like... Sorry.
Yeah, no, people tend to say that. It doesn't surprise anyone to hear that I've sort of just wrestled forever. And the more I got into acting and stunts and TV work, the more I realised that people didn't really understand what I did as a wrestler and what other wrestlers did. And part of that is that when you see wrestling portrayed on TV with the ropes and the referees and everything as a sort of a pretend sports event, it kind of throws people out. They don't really like... The public doesn't seem to enjoy people pretending that something's real when it's not. Whereas when you see people do TV or film or theatre, people are doing the same thing. They're pretending something's real when it's not, but for some reason it doesn't meet the same criticism. So I thought it'd be interesting to remove all the elements of wrestling that make it look like a fake sport, which is the ropes and the referee and everything like that, and just use the performance art, of the fighting. So by putting it into a theatrical context, we can tell stories in a traditional way, in the way that stories are told in theatre. But anytime there's fights or conflict, we use wrestling instead of sword fighting or what you might be used to seeing on stage.
One of my friends does rock and roll wrestling.
Oh wow!
And so they have a storyline that goes through it, and I'm like, oh, is that what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they sell out nearly every show because they're keen to see what happens next with the between the fighters and stuff. So the wrestlers, and it's worked out really good. And they have a band. And,
oh wow, that sounds like a great
If you're still here,
when's
next time? Oh, it's December.
How regularly is it on?
About 4 times a year they do it.
Is it in Melbourne?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we'll be sometime next year.
Oh,
That'd
okay.
be great.
Yeah, yeah. I'll set it up. You can be a guest appearance.
Oh wow, that would be exciting.
Yeah. Now, with the whole mythology, how did you come up with that concept?
Well, the mythology is another thing I've just been into forever. This show's a strange combination of 3 things that I've just loved forever. I thought I'd try and combine them into one super show. But I noticed there's this crossover between mythological characters and professional wrestlers. They're all sort of oversized, overpowered, inhuman gods, monsters, and creatures. Yeah, exactly. And they don't fight like normal people. They pick each other up and slam them around. So I thought
because they can.
Yeah, because they're not human. They're not limited.
Hey, my background's Greek, so I'm like, yay.
Is it? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's similar. Like the creation myths are similar.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of crossover.
Greek gods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought that a lot of mythology, especially Nordic, the Norse myths are quite sort of grubby and down to earth, and they have a lot in contact. Well, I think they have a lot in common with modern professional wrestling storylines. People getting into strange conflicts that they have to resolve through violence or betrayal, or people forming teams with one another to do ceremonial combat and then splitting up from one another. So it's basically, it sounds like pro wrestling or vice versa, I think.
And it's over an hour, isn't it, your show? It's an hour and half, nearly?
Well, Fringe, it's 70 minutes.
70 minutes,
when it's in theatres, it's more like an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Do you have audience participation?
They don't really participate so much.
A lot of cheering and jeering.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of cheering and jeering.
Yeah.
We like to interact with the audience a bit if they're noisy. They're not always noisy. Certainly no one gets brought out onto the stage, so you're always safe. No one's going to pull you out.
Yeah. Do you feel like the audiences here are different to UK audiences? Well, you've only really witnessed once, yeah.
Yeah, we've only done one, so it's hard to tell, but last night was really good.
Yep.
I think that there were only about 40 people there, but I think they made more noise than some of our sellout shows at Edinburgh sometimes. It really depends on the type of people that come. It doesn't just appeal to wrestling fans. Most of the people that come are just the general public who don't necessarily know how they're meant to react. But when you get a very heavily theatre-based audience, then they tend to sit in just silence for the whole thing, and that's really daunting for pro wrestlers. We're used to people shouting and hollering, so when people are in silence, we just assume that they hate it. So it's only when it gets to the end and they all cheer for us that we think, they did actually enjoy it when we had a no. So we're getting used to that stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to leave you with 2 questions. Now, the first question is going to be a bit hard because usually we like to compare music or a performance with food.
Oh, yeah.
So how would you do that with Mythos?
How would you compare it?
Or what do you think would symbolise Mythos?
I mean,
I don't know.
It's going to have to be something Viking-y, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Some kind of, I guess it would be like one of those massive turkey drumsticks, one of those comically oversized caveman drumsticks. I think that'd be Mythos. It's big and it's meaty and it's comically oversized and silly. But in the middle of it, it's got substance.
It's got taste.
Yeah, taste. Thank you.
And last question, because the magazine's called What's My Scene? What is your scene?
What is my scene? Wow. Well, I suppose, like, the purpose of our show is to build a new scene, which is a scene that brings the art form of professional wrestling and acting together. So, I don't know what you call that. Wrestle theatre? Fight theatre? My scene is fight theatre.
Lovely. Love it. Enjoy your time in Melbourne.
Thanks,
and hopefully you get to see some of Australia as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to having some time off when we're done here. We'll have done a couple of months in a row and it gets sore. It gets real sore.
Sore.
Yeah. Thanks, Mira.
Thank you. Bye.
Cheers.